She stands in the center of a quiet hospital room, a tiny 8-year-old girl from Cebu holding a violin almost as big as her fragile arms. Her grandfather, who has been in a coma for 30 years, lies motionless before her. Doctors say there is no hope. Nurses whisper that the child is simply too young to understand. But the moment she draws the bow across the strings and the first trembling note fills the air, something unimaginable begins to happen. And what the cameras capture next leaves every single person in the room crying. Because on that day, in that silent hospital ward, a little girl's love crosses 30 years of darkness and awakens a man the world had already said goodbye to. Welcome back to our channel, where we bring you true and emotional stories from around the world, stories that remind us of the power of family, sacrifice, hope, and miracles that defy everything science believes. Today's story comes from Cebu in the Philippines, and it is one of the most unbelievable events ever captured on video. Stay with us to the very end, because what happens during the final performance changes an entire family's life forever. The story begins decades before the girl was even born. Her grandfather, Arturo Morales, was once a musician himself, a violinist known in his hometown for his soulful melodies. Music was his language, something he used to heal, to teach, and to express what words could not. But 30 years ago, during a long and rainy night, Arturo was driving home from a performance when his car slipped on the wet road and crashed into a concrete barrier. The accident left him in a coma, his body alive but his consciousness lost. Doctors tried everything, his family prayed, cried, and waited. But days turned to months, months to years, and eventually, everyone accepted the painful truth: Arturo might never wake up again. Time moved forward, his wife grew older, his children started families of their own. But Arturo remained in a silent world, breathing, existing, yet never returning. And so his family built their lives around the hospital visits. His room always had fresh flowers. His bed was always clean. The radio beside him always played classical music, because they believed maybe, just maybe, the sounds he once loved could reach him somewhere in the void. Years passed, and one of his granddaughters, a bright and energetic girl named Mila, grew up hearing stories about the grandfather she never got to meet. She knew him only through photos and through the stories her family whispered with tears in their eyes. Stories of a man who had once filled the house with music, who taught children in the neighborhood how to play violin, and who dreamed of seeing his grandchildren grow. Mila always felt a strange connection to him, as if his spirit lingered in the melodies that played on the old radio beside his bed. When she was 5 years old, she picked up a toy violin from a street market stall and begged her mother to buy it for her. It was scratched, secondhand, the paint peeling, but she held it as if it were treasure. That night, she stood beside her sleeping grandfather and tried to copy the sounds she heard on the radio. Her family smiled at the innocence of a child who had no idea what coma truly meant. But something about her determination touched them deeply, and so they bought her a real violin. From that moment, Mila practiced every single day. Her mother said it was as if her small hands already knew what to do. Her father said the way she swayed while playing reminded him of Arturo himself. And her grandmother, who lost her husband to that silent world 30 years earlier, often sat by the window listening to Mila play and whispered through tears, maybe he hears her. Maybe this is how love travels. For 3 years, Mila practiced. For 3 years, she visited her grandfather every week, playing for him even though he never moved, never blinked, never responded. Nurses would peek into the room to listen, touched by the sight of a child performing for a man trapped between life and nothingness. They would tell each other, if miracles exist, they will come through this girl. But no miracle came, at least, not yet. One evening, when Mila was 8 years old, her grandmother received terrible news. The doctors explained that Arturo's body was weakening. After so many years, his organs were slowly shutting down. They gently told the family that the time to say goodbye might be near. That night, everyone gathered in the small hospital room. The mood was heavy, filled with the weight of 3 decades of longing and heartbreak. The old radio played softly in the background, but the music felt distant, fading, like hope itself. Mila stood there quietly, holding her violin. She felt something tighten inside her, something she could not explain. She looked at her grandfather's still face, at his closed eyes that had not opened once in her entire life, and she whispered, "Lolo, I want you to hear me. I want you to know I'm here." Her grandmother knelt beside her and asked, "Gusto mo ba mag play for him? Do you want to play for him?" Mila nodded. Her small hands trembled slightly as she lifted the violin into position. Everyone fell silent, even the nurses stood by the doorway, sensing something in the air. It was past visiting hours, but no one stopped her. She took a deep breath. And then she began to play. The first note was soft, shaky, like a fragile bird spreading its wings. But then the sound grew stronger, richer, carrying all the love, longing, and pain of 30 years. The piece she played was one Arturo used to perform himself, a Filipino folk melody that her grandmother had taught her. It was a song about waiting, about love that refuses to fade, about hearts connected across impossible distances. As the music filled the room, something astonishing began to happen. The heart monitor beside Arturo's bed, which had remained steady and unchanged for years, flickered. One nurse gasped softly. The doctor watching through the window stepped inside, eyes widening. The family looked around, unsure of what they were seeing. But Mila did not stop. If anything, she played with even more emotion, her eyes closed, tears sliding down her small cheeks. Every note trembled with her hope. She had no idea that the room behind her had fallen into stunned silence. She only knew she wanted her grandfather to hear her soul. And then it happened. Arturo's eyelids moved. It was the slightest flutter, a flicker so small that it could have been imagined. But then it happened again, stronger this time. His fingers twitched. His breathing shifted. The heart monitor spiked. A nurse whispered, "Dios co." My God. His daughter covered her mouth. His wife collapsed into a chair, sobbing. One doctor rushed forward, calling for support. But Mila kept playing, because she didn't know what was happening behind her. She only knew that something inside her told her not to stop. And at that moment, as the final note of her melody rang through the air, something no one believed possible happened. After 30 years, Arturo opened his eyes. It was slow, as if he were lifting 1,000 pounds. His gaze was distant at first, unfocused, drifting through years of darkness. The nurses froze. The doctor could barely speak. The family broke into tears. But then Arturo's eyes settled on the little girl standing at the foot of his bed. And he smiled. A small, tired, fragile smile that cracked like sunlight breaking through the clouds after decades of storm. Mila gasped when she finally turned around and saw him. The violin slipped from her hands and clattered to the floor. She ran to the bed, tears flooding her face. "Lolo," she cried. "Lolo, you woke up. I played for you. I played for you." Arturo tried to lift his hand. It shook, weak and thin, but he reached for her. And with a voice that sounded like it had not been used in a lifetime, he whispered, "I heard you, Anik. I heard you." The entire room erupted in sobs. Nurses cried. The doctor wiped his eyes. The grandmother collapsed against the wall, overwhelmed by a miracle she had prayed for every night for 3 decades. Even the security guard standing outside the room covered his mouth as tears streamed down his face. News of the miracle spread quickly through the hospital. Other patients peered out of their rooms. Staff members who had worked there for decades ran to see if it was true. Cameras appeared. A video was recorded and later uploaded online, showing the exact moment Mila's music reached through the void and brought her grandfather back. Arturo was monitored intensely over the next hours. Doctors said they had never seen anything like it. A man whose brain had been unresponsive for 30 years suddenly regained consciousness with no medical explanation other than one thing: emotional stimulation. And they believed the connection between Mila and her grandfather, strengthened through music, had reached deep enough to awaken something inside him. When Arturo was stable enough to speak more, he told them something that left everyone stunned. He said that for years, he felt trapped in darkness, unable to move, unable to speak, but aware of faint sounds far away. He said he often heard a little girl's violin, soft and pure, as if it were guiding him. He said that in the darkness, her music was the only thing that felt alive. And when she played the final piece that night, he said he saw a light, a warm, golden light, and he followed it. That light was Mila. Over the next few weeks, Arturo began therapy. He was weak, his muscles stiff, his body frail from decades of stillness. But he pushed himself every day, smiling whenever Mila entered the room. She visited him daily, playing short pieces to encourage him. Doctors were astonished at how quickly he progressed. They said that patients who wake from long comas often struggle with memory, movement, or basic recognition, but Arturo recognized every member of his family. He remembered his old life. And he remembered music. One afternoon, during one of his therapy sessions, Arturo asked for something surprising. He wanted a violin. The family hesitated at first, afraid he might be too weak. But his therapist agreed to let him try. When Arturo held the violin for the first time in 30 years, his hands trembled. The bow felt heavy, his fingers felt stiff, but he placed the instrument under his chin, closed his eyes, and played a single note. It was shaky, rough, imperfect, but it was a note filled with heart. Mila laughed and clapped, jumping up and down. Arturo smiled at her and said, "You saved me. You brought me back." The nurses recorded videos of the two playing simple duets together. The videos went viral, reaching millions of people. Viewers from around the world cried watching the tiny Cebu girl and the grandfather who woke from a 30-year sleep just to hear her music. But nothing compared to the family's greatest moment, the day Arturo finally returned home. The neighborhood welcomed him like a hero returning from a long journey. People lined the streets, children held signs, elderly neighbors who remembered him from decades ago wept as they hugged him. His wife held onto his hand as if she were afraid he would disappear again. That evening, the family held a small gathering. They placed Arturo's old violin case on the table, the same one he used the night of his accident. Inside was the instrument that had gathered dust for 30 years. Arturo opened the case slowly, lifted the violin, and smiled at the cracks and faded varnish. It felt like touching a piece of his old self. And then he asked Mila to play with him. The little girl beamed with excitement as she picked up her violin. The family gathered around them. The sun was setting outside, the golden light pouring through the windows. And together, grandfather and granddaughter played the same melody that awakened him weeks earlier. The house filled with music that carried 30 years of pain, hope, love, and miracles. Neighbors listened from outside, some wiping tears. Even passing strangers stopped to hear the duet that had brought life back to a man who had lost 3 decades. Each note was a reminder that love can reach beyond anything, beyond distance, beyond time, even beyond the silence of a coma. And as the final note echoed into the warm Cebu night, Arturo looked at his granddaughter with eyes full of gratitude and whispered, "You gave me 30 more years." From that day on, Arturo made it his mission to teach Mila everything he knew about music. He said she was born with a gift, not just of talent, but of a heart powerful enough to heal. And Mila promised him she would play for him every day, for as long as he lived. Their story spread across newspapers, TV, and social media worldwide. People called it one of the most touching miracles ever witnessed. But for Arturo and Mila, it was simply the beginning of a bond stronger than time itself. And whenever people ask Mila what she felt that night in the hospital, she always gives the same answer. "I didn't think I was waking him up. I just wanted him to know I loved him." And maybe that is the real miracle. Love, pure, unconditional love, has a power stronger than anything science can measure. Thank you for watching this emotional story. If you believe in the power of love, music, and miracles, stay with us for more real stories that touch the heart and remind us of the goodness still left in this world.